Hello, I am Michael Santos, and I'm back again with the Earning Freedom Mastermind Straight A Guide program. I hope that you can remember what I spoke with you about the first time that we visited, which was on day one when I gave you the overview of the entire course. Yesterday, of course, we learned from Weldon Long, an awesome guy who did time in prison, came back extraordinarily successfully, built an awesome business, but it wasn't easy. He tells his story about he had to go through prison multiple times, how he had to figure out how to develop a value system and start putting plans in place. But even after he did all of that, coming back to society was no piece of cake. It took Weldon 6 months before he was able to secure his first job. So the point I think that I got out of Weldon's message is that even though there's a struggle, if you sow the right seeds, if you take the necessary steps in advance, you can eventually overcome those challenges that he experienced after his third time out of prison. What made all the difference for him, though, was he had a new values system. He was willing to reject any type of advice or guidance that could have drawn him back into the criminal justice system. He spoke about going on a job interview where they tried to suggest that he might, be a target of an attorney general at some point, but it's no big deal. He had that mindset to say, I got to stay away. And that's really what this lesson is about today, our lesson on values. It's about having the mindset to know that when you've got to stay away. It's about having the mindset about rejecting anything that could be incongruous or not consistent with what you say you want to become. And we do that by establishing our values system. Now, you all have these lessons, these PDF lessons. I know that your staff members are passing out those lesson plans so that you have an opportunity to read about it. I'm not going to be reading to you because you don't need to be read to. I'm just going to tell you as if I'm sitting across the table from you or as if I'm talking with you. I want to talk with you about how was it that values became important to me? What have I learned about them? What kind of a difference has it made in my life? So let me give you a little bit more elaboration on how I thought about values. Because I never did. Like Weldon said before, he never thought about being a responsible person before he was locked inside of a prison cell and having to deal with the challenge of losing his father. Well, in my case, it was something different. I was locked inside of that jail cell, and I knew I was facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And I knew that I hated prison. I knew that I wanted to do something different with my life. But there wasn't anything I could do about the past. The prospect for making better decisions earlier, that was gone. I had to figure out, how am I going to make better decisions while I'm in here, locked in this cell? And as many of you may do, you start praying, you start asking God for guidance. And I just started to look for an opportunity, some kind of way to figure out, how can I create a better life while I'm locked in jail, while I'm locked in this prison system? And it was those questions that led me to that cart. Decades have passed since I was inside of that cell. But just as Weldon could remember writing out those points on his piece of paper, taking the toothpaste and sticking it on his wall, I can remember going to that book cart, scanning through the books, and finding that blue book I wrote about called a Treasury of Philosophy. When I looked at that book, A Treasury of Philosophy, I had no idea what it was going to be about. I was in prison. I had been a terrible student in high school. I had no idea what philosophy was, but there was a double volume, big book. I remember flipping through the pages and figuring out, this is probably something that can help me. And I was looking for help. I was looking for something that I could do while I'm inside. And I felt that one thing that I could do, just as it's something that you can do, is look to learn from people who have gone through struggle before. So as I'm flipping through these pages of philosophy, I find this story about Socrates. Weldon spoke about his father having a pivotal role in his life. For me, it was reading about this philosopher who lived thousands of years ago. When I looked at this book, the only thing that really stuck out at me was I'm reading about a guy who was in a jail cell, just like me. So I could identify with him. It's my hope that you can identify with this story because I was once in a jail cell like you. When Socrates had this opportunity to get out of his jail cell, he chose instead to say, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to be, a man of good character. And I remember when I read that story, I don't have to tell you all the details of that story. If you want to read it, there's a gazillion stories out there about Socrates. I just want you to know what it did for me. I remember reading it, lying back on my rack, putting my hands on my head and staring up at the wall, staring up at the ceilings, trying to tune out all the noise of, all the noise of this prison or jail. I was in jail at the time, but you know the noise. It's loud, right? You can't focus. Everybody's ticked off, And I just had to find some kind of way to connect with something better. And that book, it gave me the strength to do it. So when I'm reading the book, I remember asking a question. And Socrates is very famous for He's very famous for asking questions. In fact, many universities, they teach courses called Knowledge Through Questioning. Well, I was asking questions in that jail cell. There was nobody there for me to talk to. This is back in 1987. But I remember asking questions of, is there anything that I can do when I'm in here that would cause people to see me as something different when I get out? And, that's a yes or no question. And I would task you, why don't you ask that question of yourself? Is there anything that you can do, anything at all, and this is yes or no, that would cause people in society to see you as something different? My phone's just going crazy here. I got to turn it off while I'm making this video, or try to turn it off. Is there anything? Is there anything you can do? Because if there is, well, then maybe you should start doing it. But you've got to first figure out, what is it that you want to do? In my case, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that when I got out of prison, I was going to get out in a different way from many of the people that were in jail around me. I was around so many people in jail, and all of them had been locked up numerous times before. And when I'm asking them, during that pretrial stage, what happened? Why'd you come back? So on and so forth. You're hearing all the stories. And I knew that I was going to be in prison for a long time. But I also knew I wanted to come back differently. Don't you? Don't you want to come back differently? It's not only about getting out of jail. It's also about what can you do when you get out of jail so you can have an awesome life. Because I want you to have an awesome life. You want to have an awesome life. Your family wants you to have an awesome life. What can you do today to make that happen? When you start asking those kinds of questions, that's the first step in identifying the values by which you're going to live. And that's the essential first step that you've got to take if you really want to transform your life. From being the person that, the system sees you as. The system right now, what it sees you as. I don't got to tell you, you know that. You know that every time somebody comes in, I'm assuming things haven't changed that much, but when I was locked in the shoe or, in a cell, somebody comes in, I got to move to the back of the cell, put my face up against the wall, put my hands behind my back. I get all that. I knew what the system saw me as. You know what the system sees you as. But you also know that that's not who you are. You're much more than that. You're much bigger than that. What can you do to make it so that others also see you as being something much more than that? Which mountains are you going to climb? You can choose. You can choose what you want to become. And as we get through, just like you heard from Weldon yesterday, you're going to hear from new people tomorrow and the next day. And I'm going to make sure that I have somebody that's come out successfully and is having an impact on the world and doing exactly what they want to do. But one thing you will hear without a doubt through every one of these interviews, every one of these podcasts, it is that all of those people will say their change began way back when they were inside of a jail cell and they had that shift in focus of how they were going to change their life. I want you to have that shift in focus. Hope I don't come across as being presumptuous that I know what's inside of your mind. All I know is that by thinking about how other people are going to define you, you can start making decisions on whether you can influence that perception in others later. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take you a long time. Just like it took me, it took me a long time. It took Weldon a long time. The guy you're going to hear from tomorrow, it took him a long time. So before you can convince anybody else, you really got to convince yourself that you're something different. That's what it means to define your values, to have your values speak louder than your own words. I can tell you that when I was trying to figure that out on my own, when I was inside of that jail cell, I realized it's not really important at all about what I am. It's not really important at all about who I am. It's more important about what are the avatars. I wrote about that in there. What are they looking at in my life? What are they thinking about in my life? Who are they? I defined people that I wanted to connect with as my avatars. They weren't the shot callers in the pen, right? Those guys weren't going to open opportunities for me in the world. I had to be thinking about who's going to hire me? Who's going to give me credit? Who's going to do business with me? How am I going to get my first job? By asking those kinds of questions, then I could ask the next kind of question. You know what that is? Well, if I want to influence those people that I don't know, what can I do right now to make that happen? What steps can I take right now to make that happen? And that's when I came across the values that define my life. They may not be the same for you. I mean, I went to prison in 1987. I made bad decisions when I was 20 years old. I was 23 when I got caught. I didn't have any children. I'd never really been out in the job market. I was just a kid, trying to live as fast as I could and have as much fun as I could. But when I was in the jail cell and I knew I was facing life without the possibility of parole, that's when I knew I had to think differently. And it wasn't important what I wanted, because all I wanted was to get out of jail. What was important was me to figure out, how can I have a bigger impact on the world? How can I make other people in the world see me and perceive me not as the kid who was selling coke when he was 20, but rather as the guy who transformed his life from inside of a jail cell? And that's what led to my value system. I said, this is what's going to define me in prison. I'm going to make a focus on education, because I believed that if I focused on education, those avatars, those people I wanted to connect with in the future, they might see me as something different. I got to focus on education because they focused on education and they respect people who are into education. So, didn't think about me, thought about them. When I was in the jail cell, I thought about the people who would give me a job. I thought about the people who might give me credit. I thought about the people with whom I could do business. And I believed that if I focused on education, I might ease the way to get more of those people to believe in me. So that was the first value category in my life. The second was, I got to figure out a way to contribute to society. Now that's tougher, because how do you do that while you're in jail, right? I mean, you're locked in a shoe. You don't know how other people are going to say you contribute. But if you think about it, and I thought about it, I said, well, I don't quite know yet how I'm going to get there. But if I can figure out a meaningful, measurable way to contribute to society, well, that also may help people, my avatars, believe in me. So I decided that also is going to be one of my value codes, one of my value categories. Education and contributing to society. And then finally, number 3. The third had to do with building a support network. You see, I was 23. I was on the front page of the newspaper as this coke dealer. I had, dozens of co-defendants. They also were in the newspaper. And, that's all I knew. I was in jail. I'd been in jail for months before I had this shift in my focus, this belief that I was living by a bad philosophy, this choice that says I'm going to do something better. So I'd already been in jail for a while, and everybody who knew anything about me, all they thought of me was I'm a criminal, I'm a coke dealer, I'm a convicted felon, I'm in jail, I'm about ready to get sentenced to a long time. I was facing life without parole. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew I wanted something different. Just like I suspect that everyone who's watching this video, unless you're watching it out here because it's on YouTube or something, if you're in prison and you're watching this video, you want something different. You want to be with your family. You want to be with your loved one. You want to be doing something with your life that's different from what you're doing right now. And so the challenge you have is to figure out, well, what defines you? Because if you can figure that out, you can start shifting the perceptions of others. But who are those others? Who are the people that you want to influence? Make those people your avatars. Is it your daughter? Is it your son? Is it your wife or your girl or your husband or your mom, your dad, your grandparents? Who is it? And then who is it that you don't know? In my case, I wanted my avatars I looked at, they're people that I don't know and that don't know me. Because, it's going to be easy for me to win the affection of my mom. She's my mom, my sisters, my dad, right? But I'm talking about people I don't know. What can I do to cause people that I don't even know to believe in me? What can you do to cause people that you don't even know to believe in you, to see you differently? If you can think about those people, then you can start thinking about what would they expect of you to do? What would they expect you to do? They don't just expect you to stand up for count and do your time. That's absurd. Nobody cares about that, right? You're in there, but that's not going to get you a job. This whole concept of a second chance, dude, let's minimize those thoughts. Focus on what can you do for yourself. What can you do to cause people to see you as somebody who can bring value to their enterprise? That's what I heard Weldon Long talking about. He didn't say that people were going to hire them because they wanted to give him a second chance. In fact, he said he was selling products to Federal Express, and Federal Express wouldn't even hire him for a minimum wage job, but they'll pay him $100,000 to buy one of his products. Okay? Why? Because he brings value. He knows how to define himself. And anybody who comes to encounter him knows this is a guy who can not only help me, but he can help everybody on my team. And I want this guy on my team. Well, if you're watching this video, I want you to know I want you on my team. But in order to grow and to get out of that cell and get on to the next phase of your life, you've got to accept and embrace the reality. And that is you have the power within to influence your future. But if you want to influence a future that is different from the 7 out of 10 people who go through prison and go through, monumental struggles after that, then you've got to begin sowing seeds for a better life. And in the Straight A Guide program, those seeds begin when you start defining your own values. Set those values, determine what they are, and then let others know and see it by the things that you do every single day. Every single day. If you can do that, you can start to move the needle. You can start to change, flip the script. To use any cliche I can, you can change the way the world sees you. And it's going to start right where you are. First of all, you're going to influence, the captain. Hey, this guy, it looks like he's turning another leaf. And then he's not going to tell you because that's not in his job description. But he might say something to the case manager, might say something to the unit manager. Take a look at him. Think he wants to do something different. Whatever. I don't know who it is. I don't know anything about your past. I don't know why you're locked up. I don't know anything about you. All I know is that you're my brother or you're my sister if you're watching this video. And I want to help. And I can tell you the best thing that I can do is let you know what it takes to shift. It's not about changing things by tomorrow or the next week. It's about changing your mindset in such a way that you have a fundamentally different outcome in your life. Hopefully, get you to a better prison. Hopefully, get you more liberty. Hopefully, get you out of prison earlier. Hopefully, get you into the job market. Hopefully, get you into the credit market. Hopefully, have you becoming a functioning member of society. Not where you're living on the edge, wondering whether you're $2 away or a flat tire away from poverty, but rather having you with a path that is going to say, well, I can make things happen. It doesn't matter where I came from. It doesn't matter what's wrong, what I did in the past. What matters is how did I respond to it? That's what your values are going to do. And that's what I am hoping you will get in a takeaway from the lesson that I wrote out and distributed to you. Now, I'm going to, again, end this video like I'm ending all of the videos with an invitation. I'd love for you to share your story. Go through the course. Send an invite. I've got it on the top of this or on the side. I can't see where it's going to be. But I'm going to put you'll see that I've got my contact information right there. And although I can't respond to all of your letters because it's just not feasible. I don't have a staff like that. I'm a guy who's doing this because I'm passionate about it, but I can't write letters all day. But what I have done is put a little system in place. If you send an invite to michael@prisonprofessor.com, two things are going to happen. One of them, and I'm talking to people who have access to core links. If you've got access to JPay or one of the other email type systems, same thing. If you got access to an email type system, just send an invite to michael@prisonprofessor.com. We'll accept anybody. And when you're on the subject line, type the question that I'm asking here. And in that question, just type your response. And I'm going to cut and paste and throw it up on the web. And it's going to be on jobsandresourcesforfelons.com. And people are going to see more individuals in prison who are in prison that are focused on transforming their lives. Right? How does it start? It starts by identifying your values. Again, in my case, those values I identified as a focus on education, a focus on contributing to society, a focus on building a strong support network. Those were the initial values that got me through the journey. Why did I choose them? I chose those values because I knew I believed that's what my avatars would expect of me. They would want me to focus on those three concepts. If I focused on those three concepts, well, then that would advance the argument that I'm making that I want to be a law-abiding citizen. I want to be a contributing citizen. I want to make things happen. And the harder I worked, the more opportunities opened. But every decision I made was predicated on, is this consistent with the values that I defined? And if you do the same thing, I know that your life is going to change. That's why I want to share this with you. So that's my message today on values. I hope that you get a little more detail out of the lesson plan that I wrote. And I hope that you remember that you can send the question to me through email, or maybe your staff member will write a question and send it to me directly through the regular email. I'll make a video and send it in. I don't know if I can get it up on your screen or not, but I'm going to do everything I can to give you the message of what it takes to be successful. And tomorrow, you're going to hear that message in an interview I'm doing with a friend of mine, Malik, who did a lot of time in prison, but he's out here making an impact on the world, working with young kids, keeping them out of the gangs, and getting them on a college path through his commitment to excellence with sports and athletic counseling. And he'll talk about the business that he's been running since he got out of prison. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope that you're finding value in these messages, and I look forward to sharing you some more news tomorrow. Thank you.